Hello and welcome everyone to this week's webinar. Presenting this week a dual presentation with Intrapromote. We've been doing these about once a quarter now for the last year or so. In the last 6 months, we've kind of shifted our focus to doing really more specific to a particular vertical coverage of PPC and SEO perspectives on how to manage those kinds of accounts. So this week we're talking about how to manage PPC and SEO for e-commerce, and we'll do some really quick introductions. Eric, I'll let you introduce yourself really quick.
Hey, good morning and/or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Erik Dafforn. I'm the president of Intrapromote. We are a search and social agency headquartered out of Cleveland. I personally work out of the Indianapolis office, so Kayla and I, both being in Indiana, are part of the frozen Midwest right now. We've been doing this a long time. Not only the SEO stuff, since we've been doing since about '99, but the webinars too. I noticed, Kayla, that we did our first one in January of 2013, so happy 1-year anniversary to my webinar.
Oh, you too.
So, I'm eager to talk about e-commerce today, and even more eager to let my co-panelist introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Eric. My name is Kayla Kurtz. I'm the Senior Digital Advisor here at Hanapin Marketing. We are really excited to be celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. So super exciting year for Hanapin. I'm a writer for PPC Hero. I'm also a conference speaker, and I host and MC Hanapin PPC Hero's own Hero Conf coming up this April. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into our topic for this week. So again, really what we're talking about in this particular session is what's special about managing PPC and SEO for e-commerce clients or accounts. And first things first, it's really important to note we're certainly not talking about apples to oranges PPC management here. So e-commerce is not a completely 100% different beast than lead gen is by any means. So really what we're talking about more is like a Red Delicious compared to a Granny Smith apple, right? So they're both apples. They both grow in similar ways, but the nuances and sort of the flavor of each is a bit different. So that's how you have to manage these kinds of accounts. Really, the main variation for PPC and SEO managers for e-commerce is that you do have a little bit more increased control over what your true return on ad spend is going to be. And when I say true return on ad spend, we're talking about how obviously you'll be able to link up your AdWords, Bing ads, however many other accounts you've got running, also with SEO. Link those up to analytics and see actual dollar amounts that are driven from your PPC or SEO efforts, rather than in lead gen where you may be getting information cycled back to you from the sales team with the client or with your company, and you're making some assumptions about what those leads are valued at. With e-commerce, like I said, you've got that very specific return on ad spend data that allows you to have more control over what needs attention, what can and should be optimized, and how you can manage those accounts in the different disciplines for e-commerce from start to finish. So what do those processes look like? We're going to cover a handful of specific subtopics today in relation to e-commerce for PPC and SEO. First up, we'll talk about budgets. So how do you set these for PPC and SEO, both initially and ongoing for e-commerce accounts? Second, we're going to talk about some SERP visibility. So how can PPC or SEO managers ensure that they're maximizing their results page real estate? Third, we'll start talking about account or campaign structure. So what are the differences in keyword scope, campaign structures, content focuses for either SEO or PPC e-commerce accounts? We'll dive a little bit into some reporting. So do or should PPC or SEO managers report at a different frequency for these e-commerce accounts? Are they reporting on different metrics? Which metrics are most important? And then finally, we'll talk about the long-term optimization and success of these accounts. So once the account manager, either for PPC or SEO, starts hitting goals, how can they continue to drive value and success for that client or account? All right. I I think that's about it in terms of the brief introduction. We're going to ask you guys a couple of quick poll questions so that Eric and I are a little more familiar with the audience. So our first question is, how long have you been involved in SEM? So some of you may be in PPC, you may be in SEO, maybe you're in both. Pick one, choose, or add the two together, whichever you'd prefer to report on. Your options are less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years. We usually review this in every webinar, so there may be some repeat attendees who are getting bored with us, Eric. But
Right.
how long have you been in SEM yourself?
Yeah, this really just helps us know where to take some of the discussion points, so that's why we ask.
I think we've got some responses coming in. I myself have been here at Hanapin for about 3 years, and it looks like 46% of the viewers are kind of with me in that 1 to 3 years bracket. And then we've got in second place, there's a tie for 20% at less than 1 year and 20% at 5+ years. So welcome to our newbies and veterans. And then we've got a pretty good chunk of 14% there at 3 to 5 years. So thank you guys for sharing that information with us, certainly helpful. Hopefully we've got some tactics and strategies that are going to speak to all of those different subsets for sure. Our second question is in relation to how you manage your own SEM accounts. Obviously, Eric and I are both in agency atmospheres at the moment. I know Eric did some in-house work previously, but for you guys who are attending with us today, do you manage those accounts yourself? Are you part of a team in-house that manages? Have you outsourced your account management for either or both SEO and PPC to an agency? Or maybe you're using one or a combination of all of those, but you're rethinking it entirely due to need. I feel like generally speaking, we get a lot of attendees on these webinars who are actually managing these accounts themselves or as a part of a team, which is really great. That means that this information is being pretty directly turned around and used and implemented for our viewers, which is really great. And it looks like that's the same way today. 55% of you manage your accounts yourself. 42% are part of a team. No one is outsourcing currently and utilizing an agency, and 3% of you are looking at some potential other options. So all very good information. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop talking at you for a little bit and kick things over to Eric and let him talk about SEO budgets for e-commerce.
Right on. So thanks. You know, if I had a little more foresight, I probably would have taken these bullets and instead turned them into those neat little wheels where everything feeds into itself constantly. People always want to know, you know, how should we be allocating the teams, the budget structure. I'm not going to talk about specific budgets because it doesn't do anyone any good for me to say, well, you need to be spending $50,000 a month on this, because it varies from market to market. You know, you can do a tremendous amount with $500, and you can do very little sometimes with $500,000. It's all in how wisely you allocate the resources. For e-commerce especially, I just want to talk about the sort of the percentage allocation, the ratio of effort. And I really divide those more or less equally among sort of some back-end architecture work, a lot of which I'm going to talk about later. Content, which I really cannot underestimate, or I can't say enough about how important valid, current, original content is to the e-commerce experience, not just text, but all sorts of digital assets. And then finally, analytics. And I bounce back and forth, and I really need to stop ever really referring to the word reporting and really talk more about analyzing, because reporting isn't enough. It's not enough to just say, here's what happened. You need people, and to a lesser extent, tools that are going to be able to tell you, okay, yeah, here's what happened, but what do we do with that? What are the actions we can take now that we know that X and Y worked last month, but Z did not? So one of the analytics gurus in our industry says, you know, of all the dollars you spend on analytics, 90% of them should be people that can actually interpret and move based on information, and 10% should just be the tools themselves. So I agree with that. We really focus on not just saying, okay, here's last month's data, but what are we going to do with it this month that's going to make it worth more to you this month? So when we talk about budgets, this is basically the breakdown. I'm going to get into all these a little bit more, but that's the sort of the rough pie broken into thirds for what I recommend for an SEO budget for an e-commerce program.
Perfect. Don't you worry, because I'll take the volume of the budget discussion. I'm okay with that. I think that
That's fine.
when it comes to setting up budgets for a PPC e-commerce account, there's certainly no magic formula. You're never going to be able to determine the exact right budget to invest from day one that's going to get you a positive return on ad spend starting in your first month. It's one of my favorite questions from prospective clients. Tell me what to invest so that I make money month one. I can give you some ranges and I can tell you what we feel confident about, but no one's making any guarantees here. Making the statement itself that you can find an exact right budget to invest for a positive return is laden with guarantees that myself and really no other PPC account manager is comfortable making or having control over. So there are, however, a lot of ways to know that you're making the most educated decision when it comes to what your initial e-commerce budget is for your PPC campaigns. So first step, really start by simply taking your budget from those marketing channels where there's a proven low or negative return on investment. So if you're already losing money where it's at, this is the perfect time to invest that budget into a new and, I should note, growing channel of PPC and digital advertising. And maybe that'll be able to produce some profit. So in certain cases, that some profit is going to be better than none at all that it was getting before. So try to take at least a portion of that lost budget that's being invested in the other channels and put it into PPC instead for this pilot or this test or this initial jump. From there, I think the next best way to plan your PPC budget is to focus your campaigns from the keyword level and up on your products with the highest profit margin. So if your brand has a subset of your products that when you bring those in, you get 80% of the sale cost direct to profit. Focus on those first so that when you sell that first product, even if it does take a little bit longer to get the momentum and to start moving forward, it actually is a higher profit than if you had started on all of your lower profit margin items first. Hopefully all of that makes sense. So focus on your top margins, get those loaded up into your account from a keyword, ad group, campaign standpoint first, and then move on from there. I think the next thing that you can do when it comes to your PPC budget, when it comes to getting started initially, is really just to check out that market. So do a little bit of keyword research, find out what your competitive landscape looks like for those terms that you do want to run on, again, for that first subset of products that you're going to push for. You can do this in a couple of different ways. Quite honestly, type those keywords that you are wanting to bid on right into Google or into Bing and check out who the competitors are that show up in that space. Start taking note of what they're saying and how they're saying it. You can also use the keyword planner within AdWords. That's a really helpful tool. You can use that to get estimations on average cost per clicks that you could see in the space for those terms, potential search reach per month on those keywords. And using all of that data, you can basically apply some industry averages that you're comfortable with and do the backwards math. So apply some pretty specific click-through and conversion rates, either based on other accounts that you've run in similar verticals or spaces, or things that you know about the industry in particular. So retail tends to have around a 5% conversion rate once things get sort of moving. So you can use those kinds of numbers and do the backwards math to start to estimate the return and the potential for what you can get for what you're planning to invest. I will always emphasize that these are estimates because I've run that kind of data and research for many a client account, and very rarely do keywords ever launch and have that exact starting average cost per click that I'm quoted. That's pretty typical, but it does allow you to start outlining some potential ranges to say, okay, if we invested these low, middle, and high amounts of budget, what potential reach could we get? And then if we do a good job on the PPC perspective, what kind of return might we see on the back end of that as well?
And Kayla,
And then,
can I jump in real quick? Yeah, and I just want to say, if you're on the SEO and you're not regularly conferring with your PPC team, whether it's in-house or it's your afternoon job or it's an agency, if you're not regularly talking to the PPC team, I think that's very foolish, because just like what Kayla was talking about, PPC is the absolute ideal test bed to know which terms are going to convert. You know, like Kayla said, you don't want to check the results after 5 hours, but you know, a month into something, PPC has a tremendous amount of intelligence about what terms are winners and what are losers, and maybe what sort of terms bring people back for a second, more targeted visit. And if you're not using that in your SEO campaign, by all means, start doing that, because you know, you can get all sorts of keyword demand data from all sorts of tools, but only the only way you're going to find out about conversion data on your site is from your PPC team, and that's really going to help you drive the focus for your SEO. Because if you have 100 words you're thinking about, well, let's find 5 that actually convert for PPC and drop the 20 that don't. And otherwise, you're just going to have to test over the long term with SEO for those 100 terms, and that's very inefficient use of your time. So I'll let you get back to it, but I wanted to interject that. Is too many people talk about SEO versus PPC and not enough about how they can help each other. So I wanted to make sure people left with that point.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think that there's a lot to be learned from both sides, and I think that sometimes PPC managers will get away from the SEO keywords that may have gotten them some pretty good rankings and may have earned them the budget to run PPC in the first place. So it's a really great point, is to continue that conversation and communication back and forth. So the last thing that I wanted to address from a PPC budgeting perspective for e-commerce is that ongoing budget. How do you know what to put back into PPC or what to continually put into PPC? There's something really alarming about watching an e-commerce account that's continually getting a better return on ad spend that also continues to spend at the same plateaued amount every month. If return on ad spend is improving and there's more market share to be gobbled up, there should be an improvement in or an increase in budget as well. So really my biggest takeaway when it comes to ongoing e-commerce PPC budget is, for that budget, just pledge that from the start you're always going to take X% of the profit from those campaigns and put them right back in PPC. Now, this may be putting more budget in existing campaigns or products that you're advertising for. This could be going back to one of those lower margin subsets and adding those into your keyword scope. But whatever it is, whichever way you go after it, just make sure you're reinvesting back in the market, because if you can continually make progress, you'll stay on top of your competition as they continue to see what you're up to as well. Erik, you want to start talking about SERP visibility?
All right, absolutely. And SERP, you may or may not know, is a term we use for search engine results page. So when you hear us talk about SERP, all that means is what you see here, the result for any given query at any given search engine. But with the market share that Google has, we typically frame it in reference to Google. So when we talk about controlling the real estate, controlling the SERP, controlling your visibility, primarily, we're talking about the above the fold region. People notoriously don't like to scroll very much. Now, I'm not saying that the area below the, on the bottom half of page 1 is worthless. It's certainly not, but there's so much going on the top that I want to make sure we go through all of them. Now, I'm going to encroach a little bit into Kayla's turf here, and I will beg her to hold back the brass knuckles for now. But I just want to walk through all of what's going on here. So, this is there's a lot of clutter, there's a lot of noise on this particular image, and you'll see that with branded queries. If maybe you're searching for Target, or you're searching for Ford, or you're searching for Uggs, or any sort of big brand type of query, you're going to see a lot of things going on. But the nice thing is, if you are a big brand, and I'm going to try to address both big brands and smaller brands that don't have the same recognition, there are certain things you can control. The nice thing about this one, for example, and Kayla, if you'll move to the next slide, look how much is actually controlled by Keurig itself, either directly or indirectly. At the top left, we have their PPC presence, which is not, there's a whole lot going on in the PPC space that that I don't even keep that close of an eye on. You have your site link type of results there, so you really have 3 ads in one. Down lower left, you have the organic presence, and while it's not as common as it used to be, this is a classic, what we call a site links result, where you'll have the main Keurig result, and underneath it you'll have anywhere from 4 to 8 sublinks, or what we call site links. And that's the hallmark of a popular brand. That's also the hallmark of a well-architected site. So you're not going to see sublinks like that in a site that Google can't crawl for obvious reasons, because it doesn't know about those pages. And then on the right side, we have Keurig's Google Plus, and it's basically the knowledge graph. It has to do with Google Plus, but also has to do with Wikipedia and Google's knowledge that this is a big brand frequently searched for. The top half of that red box on the right is information pulled from Wikipedia, but it also talks about their Google Plus profile. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this webinar talking about social media, especially in terms of strategy. We have plenty of webinars that have already focused on that, but really about how social media can help your SEO presence. Look at the recent posts. Just within a couple days, Keurig has put out a new post on Google Plus. If they hadn't done that, that recent posts area along with that photo would not be there. Google is rewarding people, especially bigger brands, that are posting to Google Plus frequently by that extra space. And so one of the interesting things you don't see on the right side of this image is more PPC ads. And those are shoved down below the section where it shows the things that people also search for. So what Keurig's done here, just by virtue of it having an active Google Plus account, it's taken the non-premium PPC ads driven way down the page, and it really owns about 75 or 80% of the above-the-fold real estate. Now, if we go on to the next slide, you can see that the way SERPs look depends a lot on how the query is structured. Now we're away from a branded query. And so as a result, you'll have probably more competition in the premium PPC space. You'll have your traditional organic stuff where you see Overstock and Bed Bath & Beyond. Now on the right, you have a shopping feed. Now, Kayla's firm, Hanapin, deals in shopping feeds. You see the little sponsored note above there. Those are sort of an interesting middle ground between XML and paid search and organic, because it's not a traditional ad, but it's a separate sort of process where you can get, if you sell coffee makers, you can get that there. And if you click that sponsored little information button there at the right, it'll say, these are ads placed because of your interest in the query, and Google may receive a portion of or a bit of revenue from this. And so may is sort of in air quotes, because we all pretty much know what's going on there. It's a paid result, and that's fine. Google's determining what should be there based on the query. So that's how a broad and competitive phrase looks, and that's the sort of difference in the search engine results terrain there. And that's another, that shopping feed is something that if you do offer e-commerce on your site, you can be a part of. Now, moving on to the next slide, we have a different type of query yet, and that's a specific product from a specific manufacturer. Okay, so you won't get typically that Wikipedia or knowledge graph spot on the top right, just because this is not a query about a brand. This is what Google would call a transactional query. I want to get some breakfast blend. I have 1 K-cup left. I need it tomorrow. So they're going to focus more on the transactional, or excuse me, the e-commerce based results there. So the ads on the right side of the page are back stacked to the top. You have 2 premium PPC ads there, and then before the organic listings begin, which Green Mountain Coffee is, of course, the first one, as they should be, they have the shopping feed integrated in the left side. So a lot of the elements that you'll see from SERP to SERP are the same, but they're in different locations. Maybe it's 1 row instead of 2. You can see the brand that's offering the shopping feed results: Sam's Club, Staples, Keurig, Best Buy, etc., along there. But these are the basic elements. Across most transactional search results, these are the ones you're going to see. and they're the ones that you need to have a stake in if you're going to control as much of the real estate here as you can.
Awesome. So I want to say that I agree quite a bit with Erik on not only just the above the fold thing, but having a lot of that real estate on that first results page if you can, and whether that be on the first page or the second page of results, wherever you can afford to be competitive. I'm a huge proponent for trying to get your organic and paid search results to show up on the same page and close to one another. I will always believe in the tried and true marketing method of repetition when it comes to sales and enticing consumers. So showing up twice on one page is better than once, and that is my humble opinion, but from even myself as a consumer standpoint, I see it as a true and very specified effort if I can see the brand that I'm searching for twice on one page rather than just once. I think that really this will be my short and sweet section of the e-commerce for PPC presentation today. I think really what's most important when it comes to managing PPC for e-commerce and your SERP visibility is just to make sure that there isn't too much overlap. So for example, if you're utilizing a number of different networks to host your ads and your messaging, be sure that you're not utilizing any vendors. So it doesn't happen often with Google, right? Because that's a very specific network, but make sure that those additional vendors that you're using outside of Google or Bing, there's not any overlap on the sites that they could potentially be posting your placements on for you. If they're a little vague about where your placements are going to be, where they could occur, showing you reporting on which URLs they've got, I would dig around a little bit deeper and just be sure you're not inflating your own internal budgets or your own competition because you're showing up twice on one page from two separate affiliates or vendors. The other thing that's important to keep in mind when it comes to PPC is that you're going to occur on different channels, and there may be opportunities for different affiliates or vendors of yours for your PPC campaigns to have you show up on a page a couple of different times, specifically for your PPC and your organic listings. Make sure that the messaging is the same across those channels, or at least predominantly the same. It's true, and it is absolutely 100% accurate to say that you sometimes need to speak to PPC consumers in a different way than you speak to SEO consumers or people who are more likely to click on one of those results versus an advertisement. However, you certainly do not want to have a result that shows up in SEO and a PPC ad that pops up close to one another that talks about a different standard delivery rate, a potential different price in your product. This happens also with affiliates. So if you're utilizing an affiliate network and they maybe charge an additional percentage, and they up the price of your product in your advertising, you want to make sure that's not showing up next to your own your organic PPC traffic where you're saying the true price of your product, because you're paying that affiliate to host that ad for you, and it's never going to make a sale because you're right there showing up next to it with a lower price. So just keep that stuff in mind. If you're going to be showing up on the same page with SEO and PPC, try to drive the same message. If you're going to be utilizing a lot of different networks or any affiliate or additional vendors outside of what you're managing specifically yourself, just make sure you line up all those conversations, dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sure you're not driving up your own pricing for no reason. On to you for campaign structure, Erik.
All right, Kayla, are you ready for a very, very complex, hard to remember formula?
Yep.
All right. I like to boil things down to as simple as terms as I possibly can, and so really this is it for e-commerce. Now, of course, you can take number one there, number two, and really expand on them, and I'm going to do that. But where e-commerce really can differ from a lot of other online SEO strategies, like a site that's just a brochure site, or maybe it's a site and the revenue comes entirely from ads placed on that site. So really, traffic is the end game for a lot of sites. For e-commerce sites, traffic is not the end game. Worthless. Traffic that doesn't do anything is worthless. It doesn't matter if you had 10 million people there if only 2 of them bought something. So we need to get them there. We're going to talk a lot about that, and we're going to take a step back because a lot of I feel like a lot of agencies sort of assume, okay, what are we going to do with this traffic here? How's the UX on the site? How are the funnels? How, what are we doing? What's the cookie length? Well, that stuff's great, and it is very important. But a lot of people don't talk about, is your site enabled? Is it optimized so that people are going to get there in the first place? You will never sell a product based on SEO. You'll never get organic traffic to a product that Google can't find on your site because of the way the site's architected. So I want to take a little step back and talk about the getting them there portion. And to get them there, where them is people, we first need to get Google there so that your pages are going to rank for that stuff. We at IP, we kind of go by a linear methodology that we have. The abbreviation is CERTA, and it stands for the things on the bottom of the page here: crawling, indexing, ranking, traffic, and action. Now, of course, action is the end game in an e-commerce site, but we're going to talk about some of the things that happen before that so that you can be sure your site is optimized, ready to go, getting the click when it comes to competing against the other 9, 15, 20, 25 items on that search results page. So on the next page, I'm going to talk a little bit about structured data. Now, if you do any Google search for a recipe, or if you do put in your favorite band followed by tickets or performances, you'll see that Google results for those types of queries are visually quite different and quite a bit enhanced from what you would call traditional Google searches. Especially you search for apple pie recipe. That page is going to glow with yellow stars. It's going to have items talking about how many calories per serving. It's going to talk about prep time. It's going to talk about ingredients. All on the Google results page. You no longer need to click over to a lot of pages to see what's going on that page. You get a nice, rich preview. Now, the way that's happening is that Google is allowing sites to code data in a certain way that is invisible to users, so you don't need to worry about any sort of invasive thing that's going to interrupt the user experience on the site. Schema.org is a joint venture between Google and Yahoo and Bing that allows sites to code things so that engines really understand what it is you're talking about. So, for example, 5 years ago, if you had a site, let's say you're a dentist, and I want to talk about too, when we're talking about e-commerce and transactional sites, e-commerce isn't always the sale. Sometimes it's getting someone to fill out an online appointment form. So we're talking about a transaction that's not always a financial transaction, but it's an exchange of information in a lot of cases. So I don't want to limit the people that don't necessarily sell things on their sites. But so 5 years ago, if you were a dentist, you could have your site, drsmithdentistry.com, and Google would probably figure out, because of the text on your site, you would talk about the dental procedures that you have available. You might talk about the hours that you're open. What schema.org does is allows sites to now formally tell engines, these are the hours that I'm open. This is my address. This is the medical procedure that I offer. This is the literature that it's based on. This is the recuperation time for it. So that Google no longer needs to crawl through and sort of quote-unquote figure out on its own what your site is about. And this structured data is what enables these rich search results. There is a data type in schema.org probably for just about any type of business that you run. And if there's not, there's coding that you can do around products for their prices, their availability, their aggregate rating, things like that. So our strong advice to everyone is to code your sites with this microformatting code, this structured data, the schema.org coding, so that when Google does roll this type of result out to your type of query, you'll be ready for it. So that's one thing that's going to get you the click once you're ranking on that page that will help you stand apart from the others. Moving on from structured data, I want to talk about pagination. And I know you've seen this. Look in the lower right corner. This is just a page from Target under, I think, dresses. Look how many results are there. So you have seven different pages, each with 30 results. And what we see a lot of times is that those dresses that are on page 7 of the results, Google doesn't even know about them because it goes from page to page to page here, and it sees, hey, here's 30 more dresses that don't really stand out from the last group. I think I might index pages 1 through 3 of this dress category, and pages 4 through 7 are so much like the others that I'm really not that concerned with it. And that's a problem because we want to make, you, like I said before, you cannot rank for a product that Google doesn't know exists on your site. So if you look up Google pagination tagging, that will tell you all you need to know. Make sure that all your lists of products or your SKUs or whatever you're featuring on your site gets crawled. Now, if you go to the next site, there's a really easy and effective way to do that, and that is to submit your XML sitemaps to Google Webmaster Tools. Here's an example of a problem. We want that red bar to be very, very near the height of the blue bar. 100% is not necessarily achievable. That shouldn't, you shouldn't gauge success based on whether you have 100% indexing. But what we have here, which is more like 30% or 30, about a third, that's not cutting it. And so what this tells us is about 2/3 of the URLs in this XML sitemap, Google is not indexing. And so this, this warrants a lot of further investigation. Is there an indexing obstacle on your site that's keeping these pages from being crawled correctly? Do you have some canonical issues where your navigation talks about one URL, but then it's redirected, or you've told Google through different commands not to index that? There's a lot that can go wrong, but when you don't have enough pages indexed, it's a sure sign that you're not going to rank for those products for those URLs that are not indexed. It's plain and simple. You can't rank for something on a page. Can't rank if Google doesn't know about that page. So pagination and validating how many of your URLs are indexed, especially if you have specific products on those URLs, is critical. Next, I want to talk about content. And the most important part of this screen is not the Amazon ad or the fact that I've sort of searched for a random string of text. What's important is that when I did search for this random string of text which describes this little Bluetooth portable speaker here, over 7,500 different sites on the web have that exact same copy. So that's a problem. If you're Amazon, that's cool. You can get away with catalog copy and you're going to rank for this product. If you're not Amazon and you're just, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, if you're just another site featuring this product and you're using the manufacturer's copy, that can be a problem because you're always going to lose out to sites that have been around longer. You're going to lose out to Amazon, maybe to Overstock, to Walmart, to eBay, to the manufacturer itself, which looks like Cambridge Soundworks in this situation. If you have the resources, we highly recommend original content about this product on your site as opposed to simply cutting and pasting the manufacturer's catalog copy. Again, if you want to use some of the manufacturer copy in addition to your own, that's great, that's fine, but we don't recommend simply taking what the manufacturer gives you and leaving it at that because you're going to lose out compared to a lot of other sites. Now, once they've been there, one of the next big waves, and show it on the next site, is not just the reviews, but the interaction. Reviews are almost sort of last year. You still want them on your site, but there are a lot of third parties now, and the picture collage on the right was from a firm called Olapic, O-L-A-P-I-C, and it's just an example. I'm not advocating them, or I'm not saying to use or not use them, but this is sort of the crowdsourcing, the visuals of products in action. In other words, hey, one way to retain customers, one way to bring them back after they've bought something is to allow them the opportunity to show off using the things they bought from you and get some validation that way. So it's in a sense it ups the ante. It gives the user more reward for more reward than simply filling out a star review and then they leave it and they give your product 4 stars and they're happy. They never really check back to see if people really commented on their review. They don't really care that much. With this, you kind of go back to that site. Hey, look at this. North Face posted my picture of me with my backpack. Or hey, look, I bought these shoes and I Instagrammed them, and the next day they were on the the UCG portion of this brand site. That's pretty cool. And it's sort of the on-site equivalent to a lot of what Kayla's firm does, which is the remarketing. You've been there once, you looked at a certain product, maybe you bought it, maybe you didn't, but it's going to follow you around the web for a while and keep reminding you, yeah, I'm gonna go back to that site and eventually pick that up. So it's a neat way to talk and to remind visitors what they've done at your site and keep them coming back. When I talk about how this interacts with SEO, SEO isn't everything. It's not the single silver bullet. It's not the single answer to your online marketing prayers. It plays a part in a lot of different things. But one of my least favorite jokes in the world is where the guy goes in the doctor and says, holds his arm up and says, "Doctor, it hurts when I do this." And then the doctor just says, "Well, don't do that." The opposite of that is, hey, when I do this, I sell more. And so the answer to that is, okay, do more of that. Get more people to know your brand and search for it, because the highest conversions are always the branded conversions. Now, SEO cannot give you more brand presence overnight. It can help with that, but the things you're doing outside of SEO, your social media, your conquesting, maybe you're showing up, you're buying ads for, you're buying PPC ads for terms for your competitors. That's the kind of stuff that broadens your market share and gets people searching for you. So SEO is going to play a part there, but it's a link in the chain. So I always try to talk holistically about the online marketing picture, and not as if SEO is A to Z, because it's not. So those are some on and off page things that you can do to bolster your presence, to improve your visibility, both on the search engine and Google's index, and ways to keep them there once the transaction is complete.
Excellent. Lots of very detailed notes on campaign structure for SEO and e-commerce, Eric. Lots of good stuff. Thank you. So we'll move on to account structure for PPC. So specifically, when I'm talking about account structure, I'm going to refer to how your PPC account structure could look from a keyword perspective up. So how do you break down those different silos? Where do you start in terms of a campaign and leading down to ad group and keywords? And when it comes to account structure for e-commerce accounts, you can certainly pick from about 1 million different structure formats to get started with. It's really going to depend on your product scope. If you're offering 5 different products, that's one thing. If you've got 20,000, that's a completely different thing. So really, you need to start in a way that's going to allow you to limit the number of keywords for each one of your ad groups to 15 to 20 keywords maximum. So whatever that means in terms of where you need to start from a campaign to ad group to keyword level, make sure you start there. So worst case scenario, you start working through the build out and you realize that you've started maybe one layer too high up to allow for those really tightly themed ad groups. In that situation, just back everything up a step so that your ad groups become campaigns. This gives you more siloing of your keywords and those kinds of things. We're going to go through a specific example on the next slide, so just stick with me. So for this particular example that I'm going to go through, we're starting at a product category or subcategory level for campaigns. Then we move down to separating out our ad groups by subcategories or styles of a particular product. The keywords that then follow will be of varying tail lengths, short and long. You're going to cover a lot of different match types. This structure is going to require some really close bid management and a pretty refined strategy when it comes to setting up those bids where you want them to be, just to be sure you're not overpaying for any individual keyword or competing with yourself due to your match type options or things like that. So it can work depending on how, how deep or how siloed your ad groups are. A very specific bid strategy can and will be necessary. But let's just go ahead and go through what an actual version of this campaign would look like. So Kayla's Kicks is one of my little fake brands that I like to play around with. I'm feeling into shoes today. Sometimes I'm Kayla's Cupcakes if I'm in a comfort food mode. So let's say at Kayla's Kicks, we offer a small range of shoe types, so mostly high heels and boots. I've started a campaign specific for our stiletto heels. These are, of course, very, very different from wedge sandal heels or basic pumps, so they get their own campaign. Within that campaign, I started ad groups by brand names we offer, material of the stiletto itself, color of the particular shoe, and even as I was putting this example together, I realized that this was not backed up as much as I would want it to be, right? So I would want even smaller ad groups than this. I would probably move brands Jimmy Choo up to its own ad group. Then we'd have brands Manolo Blahnik. You see where I'm going with this. So that then you've got maybe 5 to 10 keywords per ad group at that point. Same thing with material and color. You back up leather stilettos to be the material ad group, and then you've got very specific leather stiletto only keywords in that ad group. But again, this is just an option, somewhere to start and get running down the right path with. This kind of a structure where you've got very specific products lumped together is going to allow you to set up some CPAs specific to ad groups, because the margins on, like in this example, the margins on any of my stilettos should be pretty close to the same. But the margin on a stiletto versus a leather boot is going to be pretty different, right? So we want to make sure that we have those things siloed out, and then from there, just break stuff down into a way that allows you to speak to your consumers most directly. So in this example, right, my ad copy for the color ad group, someone who types in looking for a specific color of stilettos, maybe at my ad copy, because I'm looking at a bunch of different colors of keywords, I have to just talk about how we offer a wide range of colorful stilettos. That's not necessarily as engaging an ad copy. So just make sure that your account structure is broken down in a way that allows you to manage to return on ad spend and your margins per product, but that also allows your ad copy to be written to very specifically speak to that consumer based on what they've searched for. When it comes to that keyword coverage, so we've talked about the structure and overall how you want things to sort of flesh out, but what keywords do you want to include? And I encourage you to think through all your different keyword combinations from all segments of your sales cycle, all different purchase interests, and try to cover as much as you can. You don't want to miss out on sales opportunities simply because you're missing the keyword coverage for terms or phrases that your customer base is using to find your products. I do not mean every single keyword possible, so no one try to hang me on that later. You've definitely got to keep in mind competition on your terms, whether you can actually be competitive yourself in the marketplace given the estimated cost per click and what that would mean on a conversion rate level for you and your account. If there's a keyword that in order to get one click, you would have to spend 50% of what your total profit is going to be on a pair of shoes, that's not ever going to work out really in a way that's going to be beneficial for your account. So try to cover all your bases. Make sure you're covering all areas of your sales funnel. This is going to include keywords that say buy. This is going to include keywords that say compare. You have to accommodate for those differently, set their bids as they need to be. Someone who is comparing is a lot further up in the funnel than someone who's saying, I'm ready to buy a pair of shoes today. So make sure you keep that in mind and cover all of those bases most definitely. It's poll time, everybody. So we want to find out from you all whether you've got any preferences or where you focus the most on short or long tail keywords for your e-commerce accounts. So if you focus on mostly short tail, so you're focused on increasing your search volume. You want to have the most shot at the most search audience possible. So you're using mostly short tail terms. Maybe you use mostly long tail. Those tend to have a slightly higher return on investment or return on ad spend because they're more refined. Maybe you use both, but you're mostly weighted towards one or the other. And then your final option is that you use both and you're nearly 50-50 split on your scope of keywords. Erik, what do you, from an SEO perspective, what do you think is the general focus for e-commerce accounts? Is it short tail, long tail, an even combination?
Um, Boy, it's a broad mix. On the SEO side, we're talking about where your obstacle is cost, ours is time.
Right.
So, the more competitive your keyword, the longer it's going to take to get up there. We advocate really starting out at long tail and saying, looking down the road a couple of years, we're working our way towards the more competitive um, short tail, higher volume terms. But at the beginning, we advocate a longer tail strategy.
Great. Yeah, I was going to say that I think for a lot of our e-commerce accounts, it's a pretty even split, just because that's what's necessary to fill the funnel from top to bottom. And I think it looks like a lot of our attendees today tend to agree with me a little bit. So 33% are at a nearly 50-50 split. 31% are at using both, but are more weighted towards one or the other, which sounds like maybe it's a little closer to your method, Erik. And then we've got 22% at using mostly long tail and 14% who are focused on short tail. So it's very, very interesting information, kind of evenly spread out there. So that's cool to see. All right, we moved on to reporting for SEO. Erik, I'll let you take it over.
Yes, and I realize I've hogged a lot of this, and I'm going to move fairly quickly with about 8 minutes left here. So when you look at analytics, it's easy to get lost, and it's easy to look at shiny things and wander off the path. It's very important to remember why you're there. You're looking for things that sold. You're looking for things that you did that made the things actually sell, and to do more of that stuff. So don't lose your train of thought as you go through analytics. There's a lot of shiny objects in there. Don't get pulled aside. Next slide. We show that e-commerce, for the most part, the revenue is that's the prize you need to keep your eyes on. We look at engagement stuff. We look at ways that people arrived beyond, outside of SEO, and how are the engagement statistics there. Typically, SEO has a pretty high engagement rate. Often, SEO traffic, the ratio of SEO traffic to total traffic meets or exceeds the total of SEO revenue compared to all revenue. But at the same time, there are ways to get lost in this. And moving to the next slide, what we recommend against is keeping your eyes focused too much on one thing that doesn't really end up meaning that much, and getting your pocket picked in the meantime. Bounce rates, for example. Overall, people say, well, you don't want a high bounce rate. Well, maybe you do in some visits, and maybe the fact that it's high in some visits is not that big a deal. Maybe they're just coming to check a price, and they're going to be back some other day to to make a transaction. It's something that if you worry too much about it, you're going to end up changing a lot of stuff that might not need to be changed, or at worst, is going to actually have a negative impact on your site. And the reason I talk about this is on the next slide. We're taking a really hard look at how, what I'll call the co-opetition of various channels here. Your sales channels don't exist on an island. They're working together. Everything highlighted in red here was one or two or more channels working together to create that sale. That's really important. So if you get a high bounce rate on a PPC campaign, well, if you get it for a year and you don't see any evidence that it's working, you can change that. But don't abandon it right away, because look how much is going on in the world of combination here. We have organic search plus direct. You have on number 6 there, you have a lot of people converting. They came on a paid ad. They came back later on an organic search, and maybe that first paid search was for a specific product. They liked what they saw. The next time they came organically, they just searched for Kayla's Kicks. They went right back to the Jimmy Choo page and they bought. So you need to look at the information as an aggregate. You can't just say, well, SEO is working or it's not working. Email is working or it's not working. How are they working in tandem with other channels? And that's where you want to go. That's, if you can drill into the keywords that they used for the paid search that ended up, if you look at last click attribution, you look at number 6 and you'd say, well, look at all the stuff organic search was responsible for. Well, they first came on a paid search. So just because they didn't buy anything in that paid search, they came back later and they did do something through a different channel. So that makes those PPC terms valuable too. So all I want to leave you with is, look at the big picture, try to understand how these channels are working with each other, and encourage more of that symbiosis.
Excellent, very good points. And we'll try to keep this short and sweet for you guys. On the PPC side of things, when it comes to reporting for your e-commerce accounts, I just like to see an increased frequency of reports. And that's just because you've got more data that you can see. You can see it a little bit more, it's more available more quickly. So you know where your final wins are coming from by unifying your analytics and conversion data. And that probably is going to look like weekly or bi-weekly calls or reports, either with your internal team or with your client, just to review the adjustments that you've made, sort of what performance and what results have come out on the sales side from that work, and then adjusting from there again. So this is going to depend on the volume of traffic, of course. If you're a smaller e-commerce brand, stick closer to the 2-week, the bi-weekly cycle. If you've also got long sales cycles in your brand, don't meet too often, because you'll adjust before you're ready, and you know if you've actually made, you've got statistically significant data to make a decision. In terms of the most specific metrics, and again, I'll try to move through these somewhat quickly. Of course, return on ad spend is the most important. That's very directly how many dollars are you making for how many you're investing. But there are definitely some other metrics that can indicate either current performance or potential future performance improvements. Those are the ones that are listed below. So click-through rate. Not only is this going to be beneficial for quality score on the long term, but assuming you're getting a high click-through rate for the right reasons, it can mean that you're able to increase your remarketing audiences because you've got more people coming to your site. You're going to get an improved quality score because more people are finding the relevancy in your ad copy with your queries. And CTR is also a pretty solid leading indicator for higher conversion rates as well. Next on the list is quality score, and I really speak to this one for e-commerce because we've done some actual internal testing and analysis on our e-commerce client accounts versus lead generation accounts, and the correlation between improving return on ad spend with better quality scores on the e-commerce side is very blatant. So if you just go to PPC Hero, instead of talking about this, I'll just tell you where to go find it. Go to PPC Hero and type in "when does quality score matter" up in the search bar. Mr. Jeffrey Allen, our president, wrote that post, and it's incredibly exciting to read through and know that when you do quality score work for e-commerce, it is going to help in the long run. So keep with it. The last two, really quick: average position and average cost per click. Depending on how competitive your market is, decreasing your cost per click and or improving your average position can really show you what leeway you're making in terms of saturating the market and whether your PPC efforts are measuring up well against your competitors. Then finally, and also incredibly important, is your average PPC sale value. A lot of people don't speak to this, and it's because they don't want to be too braggadocious, but I think that this is a good opportunity to do so, especially if your brand or your client has other marketing channels that are competing for budget. If PPC accounts and PPC campaigns and sales are bringing in a higher average value per checkout than another medium, find out if it's possible to get a bigger chunk of that money so that you can continue to drive those larger value sales. All right, long-term results for SEO.
Yeah, to keep on top of this, remember that 5 years ago the schema.org stuff did not exist. 3 years ago the pagination stuff did not exist. Keep an eye on what Google's doing. Google and the other engines don't come out with these joint ventures very often, and when they do, it behooves you to pay attention to them, just because no one's ever regretted taking the indexing advice of some of the big engines. So you need to make sure that as site development techniques continue to grow and get more complicated, that you're keeping up with ways to help that content be seen quickly and accurately by engines. Definitely keep the customer engaged and returning. That's how, that's where we see people, the demand for branded queries increasing. The service after the sale is what is going to bring people back there to your site the next time, as opposed to just restarting their search, and we don't want that. In terms of content, like Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross, ABC, always be composing. So always be thinking about ways that your users can benefit from new ways to describe it, whether it's text or image assets or videos. Always be working on the content portion, and that's going to keep you ahead of the game. And I got to say, this whole hour was worthwhile, if for no other reason than to hear Kayla say the word braggadocious.
You're welcome. I think we're having really good, lots of people are still sticking around. So we're going to go a couple minutes over, you guys, but we're almost there. When it comes to continuing your long-term results for PPC, I really truly believe that the first step in providing that continued value is to always set another goal when you hit one. So I don't hear this internally from our Hanapin teams, and it's one of the reasons I'm so proud to work with them every day. But hitting a client's goal or hitting an account's goal does not mean that your job is done. It's time to hit that goal consistently, and then once you've proven it can be done more than just 1 week in a row, set the next goal. That's your job as an account manager, is to continually keep pushing. No one likes an account that's on autopilot. Nobody likes an account that's only making $3 for every one it's making. If it's possible to make $4 for everyone, keep pushing. See what else you can do to stretch that dollar. Jay-Z is my hero, I'm just going to say it. I also think that it's important from a long-term e-commerce success standpoint for PPC to always be ready with the next set of products to expand into. When the company you work for or the client you represent is ready and they come to you and say, here's more budget, where are you going to put it? Know what you've not covered yet, which one of those subsets has the highest likelihood of being successfully complementary to what you've been running so far, and get it ready to go. You can find new networks or channels for your clients to run in. We represent quite a few e-commerce brands here at Hanapin that come to us when they need new buckets of customers who maybe they're not using, the usual Bing, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter to find the products that they want to purchase. So they task us with going out and finding those additional networks that we've not tapped into yet. Further and far more exciting is when they ask us to find new products they should be expanding into. So specifically in the supplement vertical, okay, we're doing a great job. We're selling products X, Y, and Z at a really ridiculous rate, but what's a new product that they could sell in the supplement vertical? Allowing us to be a part of that, and if you're prepared as the person manning that account with that kind of information, you're going to get a lot of long-term buy-in. Also, finally, just make sure you're taking advantage of all the opportunities you have available in the engines that you are running in. PLAs come to mind in particular. It's a surprising number of e-commerce accounts I dive into that have never played around with PLAs because, yeah, they're not easy and they're a little bit scary. Again, I'm going to look to our incredibly experienced team. One of our senior account managers, Amanda West Bookwalter, actually wrote an incredible mini PLAs series about how to get started in that area from start to finish. So again, just go look up PLAs and at PPC Hero and make sure you check out that post if you haven't already. And that's it. We're here to the roundup. So certainly the biggest takeaways we want you guys to understand when it comes to PPC and SEO for e-commerce is that these campaigns certainly do have special nuances to consider and strategize around when it comes to hosting campaigns for e-commerce. Just make sure you implement those best practices that do still apply, that make sense no matter what, and then just allow for a higher degree of control and responsibility and optimization in the long haul in order to stay successful. All right, we've got one more poll question for you guys. We'll sort of talk through this one really quickly. Eric and I, of course, are in the agency atmosphere, so if you all are at all interested in some of our exclusive webinar offers, we'd love to talk to you. So Eric and his team are offering a 1-hour Google Webmaster Tools audit and consultation. My team here at Hanapin, it's actually truly myself, I'm offering some free account consultation by way of Solutions Blueprint for you if you're interested in that. You can also very much not be looking for either, or if you're interested in both, you can let us know and we will reach out individually. Thank you guys so very much for attending today. We're super excited. Usually we have time for questions right now, and we don't today because we ran over a little bit. I think we've got a few that came in, Eric, throughout the length of the webinar. So What we'll do is when we go to post this recording on PPC Hero, which will probably be tomorrow sometime, we will go ahead and post responses to those questions for you guys as well as some additional resource. So feel free to reach out to Erik and I specifically. Our emails are there at the bottom if you've got additional questions you think of afterwards when we wrap up that you want to send our way. We really look forward to hearing from all of you, and thank you so much for attending and sticking with us a few minutes late.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.